Okay, with the urinary system, we're going to start off very basic and then get deeper. So the purpose of the urinary system is to help filter out the blood. It's very important to help maintain the acid-base balance, very involved with homeostasis, keeping the correct balance of not only water, but also of a lot of the electrolytes in the blood. So start up here with the kidneys. You have two kidneys, one on either side. From the kidneys, that is where the filtration, what we call reabsorption and secretion, is going to occur. And then you're producing the urine, which will then flow down the ureters to the bladder. The bladder is made up of transitional epithelium, so it's able to stretch. So this is the bladder right here on the female. Notice above the bladder it would be the uterus, so that's why when women are pregnant, it's often pressing down on their bladder. So the bladder can stretch to hold a higher volume of urine, and then it is released through the urethra and released from the body. So that is the general anatomy of the urinary system. Now if we move closer and look at an enlarged model of the kidney, remember on top of the kidney you have your adrenal gland. Your kidney has a capsule around it, renal capsule, that's helping to protect it. First thing, in general, the outermost portion of, or more superficial portion of the kidney is known as the renal cortex, and the renal medulla is the interior section. You'll notice that it's kind of divided in these little pyramid sections, which are actually called the renal pyramid. Between those would be the columns, which is where you tend to have your blood supply coming in. So you notice you have multiple renal pyramids separated by multiple renal columns. If we look at the blood supply, the renal artery is what is coming in at the hilum, this little indentation part of the kidney. So here is your renal artery. It comes in, starts branching the segmental arteries. It is the interlobal arteries that go between the columns. And then up around the top will be the arcade arteries. And then feeding down into each of the pyramids will be the cortical radiate arteries, which we're going to come back and talk about those in a moment. When the urine is being formed, it's in the edge of the cortex, but also down into the medulla area, and the pyramid sections. The urine is going to be produced, and then it is going to move down into what's known as the minor calyx. From the minor calyx, the urine will flow into the major calyx, and then this area right here now develops into the renal pelvis right before it leaves down the ureter. So if we look up here, you can see a little more detail of the blood supply to the kidney. Once again, renal artery, segmental artery, going up between in the columns between the pyramids is your interlobal arteries, the arcades, and then you have the cortical radiate arteries. This is showing one nephron, which is the functional unit of the kidney. If we move over here with the functional unit, or that nephron, what is going to happen, you have what is known as the glomeralis, or the Bowman's capsule, and this is where, from the cortical radiate arteries, you have your afferent arterioles. They are going to come in and wrap around. It's a very dense capillary bed within this Bowman's capsule, or the glomeralis capsule. This is where the filtration starts. So just about everything that's in the blood is going to be filtered out except for the proteins. And some of the water will be filtered out. From here, this is where you start the process of forming the urine. As it leaves that Bowman's capsule, the urine that you have just formed, it is going to move through what is known as the proximal convoluted tubule. It's called convoluted because of all the twisting, proximal because it's closest to the capsule, and it's a tube. As it proceeds down this direction, In most of this will, the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, will be in the cortex area. This loop now, as it's coming down, is referred to as the loop of Henle. This is now passing into the medulla, into that pyramid region. In the loop, you have the descending loop. It's going to loop back around into the ascending loop. This is where you have reabsorption and secretion occurring. Basically, what the body is doing is it's monitoring what's happening right now. What do you need to put back into the blood? Because as you can see, there's a blood supply wrapped very closely around here, so substances can diffuse out of that tubule back into the blood. So if calcium's really low or sodium's really low and you need to get it back in the blood, then it's reabsorbed back into blood in this location. But it depends on what's going on at this particular time, and it's constantly changing. Whatever is left in this fluid goes up the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, and then it will join here on the tubules, convoluted tubules, which are collecting now the urine. So down here, as you can see, you have several of these nephrons connected to it, forming the collecting duct. This is the urine. This is what will come now and be drained into the minor calyx, to the major calyx, to the renal pelvis, and out the ureter for storage in the bladder.